I am extraordinary. I never had a genetic advantage nor disadvantage. I never excelled in anything, even though, as a kid, I tried everything, at least once. When I was 7, I did karate. But instead of striking with purpose and discipline, I got bored waiting for my instructor to teach me the next move. And I turned my lessons into more of an impromptu interpretive dance. It was just too much waiting around. Then, my mother thought, maybe I was more suited to Irish dancing. Unfortunately, we never got to the kicking element of our karate training, because if we had, she would have known I'd be useless at dancing because I was born with 2 left feet. Okay, so discipline is out of the question. I clearly lack all coordination. My mother was probably pulling her hair out trying to find a sport that I had the ability to do. Until she found the perfect sport. All I had to do was sit there and not move. That's it. You could literally do it in your sleep. And what was the sport? Horse riding. Now, obviously, as a competitive horse rider, it's a lot harder, but as a kid, it's literally just sitting there on the horse. I was put up on the back of the horse, and I set off on my wild adventure around some random field in the back arse of Leitrim. And I survived too. I made it the full lap of the field, and by the time the horse came back around, my mother was so delighted to see me still on the back of the horse. But the only reason why I was still on the back of the horse was because I had gotten so bored that I literally did it in my sleep. I fell asleep on the back of the horse. Now, I did end up coming around a bit. I guess I just gained basic motor function. And I played Gaelic football for my local club from around 12 years of age. I started playing rugby soon after, where I actually excelled. At 15, I was good enough to be chosen for the Midland squad in the under-16 Leinster Development Competition, and went on to win the Shane Horgan Cup. Maybe this was it. Maybe I had finally found my sport. I had found the thing that I was finally good at. And then, for use of a better term, it all went tits up. I don't really know what happened at 16. It was just like a switch. I was a kid that was beyond optimistic. I was always up for a laugh, never had a worry in the world past what video game I was going to play when I got home that evening from school. So all of a sudden, I'd wake up in the morning and wondered what the point was. Why would I bother going to school today when I looked in the mirror and I absolutely hated what I saw? I was consumed by body dysmorphia. I stopped eating the dinners that my parents made. I threw my packed lunch in the bin. And I started looking at the back of food labels for sugar content before I even dared to eat it. I was treating food like it was the enemy. And I wasn't even big or unhealthy. I just looked in the mirror every day, and when I didn't see the Greek god that I'd see on TV looking back at me, I was ashamed and I felt humiliated. This was only further amplified then by the slagging culture in Irish schools, being named pepperoni nipples in the changing room, or getting labelled as fat because I couldn't run for as long as all the rest of the kids in the beep test. I went from cracking jokes and going on trips over school holidays to falling asleep at my desk in school and staying in my bedroom over summer because I didn't want to feel pressured into having to take my top off when my mates went down to the loch for a swim. Even the easy things felt hard. I lacked all energy because I wasn't eating. And when it came to the sport that I once loved, I became completely disinterested. I quit rugby. I hated school. I wasn't myself anymore. To be honest, I hated myself. I entered COVID-19 aged 18. And the pandemic, it affected the entire world dramatically, more than anyone could have ever imagined. Millions lost loved ones, their livelihoods. Some people just lost everything. And selfishly, it's probably the best thing to have ever happened to me. For a man who was lost with no ambition, no self-worth, and not a care in the world, you're telling me that all I had to do was wake up every day, play video games for 12 hours a day, every single day. Sure, that was basically paradise. But that's not the reason, obviously, why it was the best thing to ever happen to me. It's because I had to spend most days alone in my room like a hermit. And it gave me a lot of time to be introspective and to really think about what I was doing and where my future actually lay. While my friends either had jobs or a college course they were really interested in, maybe a sport that they were really passionate about, I had nothing. Pre-pandemic, I was working as a part-time labourer. But after the Leaving Cert, I got my first choice to go to DCU. But the thing was, I hated waking up at 5 a.m. to go to a cold building site, and I didn't like school, so I knew I probably wasn't going to enjoy the lectures. The last few years had flown by, and I didn't accomplish anything that really mattered to me. By 19, my single biggest achievement was that damn medal that I won 4 years ago. From playing a sport that I no longer cared for, I had no reason to wake up in a post-pandemic world, and I desperately, desperately needed a reason. Rugby briefly introduced me into the gym, and at the time I didn't necessarily enjoy it, but that body dysmorphia that I had in my teen years, it never really went away. And I genuinely thought that maybe, just maybe if I had big arms, I'd hate myself just that little bit less. Plus, it would give me a goal to work towards. It would give me a reason. It was two birds with one stone. So once restrictions were lifted, the gyms reopened, I begged my dad to drive me to the nearest town, 15 minutes away, to go get a gym membership. I had no idea what I was doing at first. But through YouTube tutorials and a lot of trial and error, I started getting the hang of it. Even though my parents were probably fed up with me constantly looking for lifts in and out of town, before I knew it, I was lifting more than I could ever imagine and spending my free time learning about the benefits of creatine and protein. But most importantly, I learned one thing, and that was that starving myself was not healthy. Who knew? At 20, my lectures had moved from Zoom to Classroom. I had been living in Dublin the last few months, and I finally had the big arms that I always dreamed of. I made a complete U-turn from where I was only 18 months prior, now hyper-focused on the gym. I was tracking every calorie, 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. My personality was back, and even though I was a bit more introverted now than I would have been, I felt an ounce of confidence again. I was the best version of myself in years. And because of that, I wanted to document my journey, to show people that if I can get out of that pit, anyone can. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard this little app called TikTok, but I downloaded it in April of 2022. And that's when I made my first ever post. I figured that if I waited until the college semester was over, the lads would have to wait until after the summer to slag me in person about my videos. Now, I also thought for some reason that lads on building sites wouldn't use TikTok, and they wouldn't see my video, but then it turned out it was exactly 2 weeks from when I made my account that my boss followed me on TikTok, so that clearly did not work. Surprisingly, all the lads were actually really supportive. The odd jab here or there, but I just kept posting anyway, and now that they all knew about it, I said, sure, there was nothing to lose. So I would spend most lunchtimes by myself thinking of videos. That way, when I went home, I could go to the gym and record them. Now, a real turning point was when I started making videos at work. Every Friday at 10 a.m., the lads would go and get a big Irish breakfast. Big old fry. And instead, I would stay in the van and eat my ham sandwiches because, to be honest, I couldn't really afford a fry at the time. And I also was watching, obviously, what I ate to a T. One day I had the bright idea to treat myself to a protein shake in a shop. And while I was at it, I may as well review it. That eventually led into reviewing energy drinks. And then I started reviewing protein bars. For some reason, the way I say a protein bar is funny to a lot of people. I don't know why, but it's very entertaining. And it turned into an international comment trend to comment protein bar on every single TikTok video. I don't understand it to this day, but I was global. I was like Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide. Anyway, this gave me a bit of a boost on the app, and by the time I came back to school, or back to college after the summer, I had surpassed over 250,000 followers. In September of 2023, I was 21, and I just hit 1 million followers on TikTok. It was a massive, massive milestone for me. Biggest thing I've ever done. Content creation is now my full-time job, and I just graduated with a BA in Communication Studies. The world was my oyster, and I was definitely on top of it. What could go wrong? Unfortunately, using addiction as a facade to avoid your underlying issues, albeit maybe beneficial in the short term, it will lead to those issues creeping back up again. And when the thing that you've given your life to, which in my case was the gym, starts to feel stagnant, unless you have something to take its place, it really does hit you hard. When I fell out of love with the gym, I dived headfirst into content. But without fitness at the foundation, I began to lose myself again. my content started to reflect that, and my videos started to feel hollow. They felt like they weren't even mine. I was making videos for an audience that didn't exist because the creator is the audience that they make videos for. What started as a mission to help others, to inform people how to make their lives just a little bit better, had now done a complete 180, and now I was making videos for the sake of it, while my own sense of self felt weaker than it did before I even started. And it took me so long to finally understand what I was doing wrong, because I was still getting the brand deals, I was still getting the engagement, but when the followers stopped, that's when panic really set in. And content became a numbers game for me. My entire ego had become dependent on the value of a statistic on my phone. When I took a step back to look at myself in the mirror, and now at 22 years of age, I was transported back into the body of my 15-year-old self, grabbing at my love handles, wishing there was a way just to cut them off, staring at my chest covered in some sort of acne that I never had before. My heart was thumping, out of breath, just from walking up the stairs. I was back at square one, and this time I needed to do something different, do it right. So my life doesn't just become a never-ending cycle of deep down hating myself and trying to cover it up with the next random fad that came along. So step one, I rejoined my old rugby club to reinstill a sense of humility, if anything. And it was definitely humility that I got, because on my first training session, I couldn't finish the first set of runs without having to stop and heave over the barrier like a fish out of water. Then, on January 2nd, 2025, I signed up for the Mullingar Half Marathon. That evening, I went on my first long run, which was probably about a kilometer in total. It was long to me at the time. Only 74 days later, I actually completed my first half marathon with the time of 2 hours, just before my 23rd birthday, which was massive for me. As someone who never liked running, this was just a huge achievement. But this time I needed to make sure that I wasn't going to go back to my old ways and use running as a new addiction to literally run away from my problems. It definitely helped that I didn't even like running that much. And to be honest, I still kind of don't. I've completed 2 high roxes now, one being a pro high rox, and I've also signed up for a full marathon in October. But either way, I still run every day that I can, even if it's just a small one, because I don't do it for the reasons that I used to think people ran. I don't do it to burn calories and use it as some sort of punishment to make myself feel better about something that I ate yesterday, you know. I love to run because I love the feeling of feeling healthy. I love being able to walk up the stairs without being out of breath. I love being able to run laps at rugby and not feel like I'm about to collapse. I love being able to eat food and not worry about the numbers on the back of the packet, because I don't need to track everything that I eat. I'm still conscious that I'm not eating absolute rubbish all the time, you know, but I know that if I'm staying healthy with regular exercise, I can grab a slice of cake or the odd cheeky pint every once in a while and not feel like an absolute failure. It's not even just running, but on the days where I don't have rugby training, or I'm not playing basketball with my siblings, or even kicking around a football in the back garden by myself, I can go for a run, or I can go for a walk. And that way I know that I'll feel good because I wasn't sat on my arse all day scrolling on my phone. It's just about being active in the ways that work for you. A healthy body is a healthy mind, and exercise gives me the time to talk to myself, to work through my problems. In a day and age where we constantly have our heads stuck in a phone, we're constantly communicating with someone or something through a screen, we never really give ourselves a break and talk to ourselves to understand our own emotions. Why do I feel a certain way about this? Or how do I overcome this problem? Are my emotions justified? These are questions we should all be asking ourselves more. And getting out and being active gives me the time to ask myself these questions. Reflection has also allowed me to re-understand why I create videos in the first place. And I should be more thoughtful of what I post. You know, I really try to be as positive as I can with me content because I know how much social media affects people. I've reinstilled the love that I once had for content creation because it has regained a purpose in my life, which is to hopefully entertain and also to show people that change is possible for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, you can escape that rut that you're in, because I did. Now at 24, the achievements that I've gained through my involvement in fitness, like representing Red Bull at various high roxes, becoming the Irish ambassador for the NFL, winning even newcomer of the year at my rugby club. I run a 47-minute 10K while bench pressing 145 kilograms. My entire career, nearly 2 million followers across all platforms and over 1.4 billion views on TikTok alone, is, at the bones of it, because of the role that sport and fitness played in my life. I am so proud of these achievements because I'm not a professional athlete. There's nothing special about me and what I can do. All these accolades pale in comparison to people who live and breathe in their area of expertise. Put me up against a professional runner, I'd be left in the wind. Put me up against a power lifter, I'd be crushed under their warm-up. I'm still the kid that I was at 7, whose parents brought them to try every sport in the country because they were useless at every single one. I am the same as everyone in this crowd, because if you've ever felt not good enough, I have too. If you've ever felt like life just isn't worth living, I have too. But I'm not ordinary, because I've worked so hard to get into the position that I'm in. Through ups and downs, all I've done is kept my head up and never gave up. And I'm sure life has thrown you a curveball in some form or another. And if you're here today, that means that you didn't give up either. And that means that you are extraordinary too. Thank you.